Hey, what's good, y'all? This is Audio Freebase. My name is Hype. We back again with another dope interview with another dope artist, Lou Alex. Man, we so excited to have you here. I'm gonna give you the floor so you can introduce yourself, where you from, who you are, what you do. Just give the people a little short introduction about you.
But what's good, bro? What's good, everybody? My name is Lou Alex. I'm a musician. I'm a producer, an audio engineer. Pretty much anything musical I do. And now I also teach music production too. So that's something new that I've added kind of to my portfolio. But yeah, man, I make music. I produce. I'm an artist. So right now I'm just kind of working on music and incorporating my different instruments that I play and everything like that into my own music and just trying to push it out to the world.
That's dope, man. That's dope. You're definitely a renaissance man, with this music thing, bro. So yeah, man, I'm happy to have you here, man, because we actually kind of go back a little bit. You've been on almost all of the projects that I've put out so far. Yeah, I mean, and yeah. So I just remember from the first time that I came across, what I'm saying, your music and your art, I was just like, yeah, I gotta work with bro. So I mean, how is it like, you know, kind of give us like a background as far as like how you got started, because I mean, you do so many things music related. You play instruments, you rap, you sing, mix, man, you know what I'm saying? So like, what was kind of like the start for you?
Well, to start for me, I always tell everybody it was the church, really. I grew up, I always loved music, but I needed like a place to do it. And my parents are pastors. And my dad at the time was like the head pastor of this church. And so I kind of just saw the people playing the drums and saw the people playing the keyboard and the piano and everything. And I wanted to hop up there and try it out myself. So I started off playing drums around like, I had to be 7 or 8 years old. I just kind of hopped up there and started playing by ear. And then I took it to school and I wanted to pick up drums at school, but everybody else was playing drums too. So the band put me on clarinet. And I actually played clarinet. Probably to this day, I would say that's probably the instrument that I'm technically best at when it comes to just everything, like reading music and just playing by ear and everything. But I also picked up saxophone and producing around middle school, high school, that time period too. And then when I got to college, that's when I really started taking being an artist seriously. I did a little bit my senior year in high school too, but when I got to college, that's when I really was like, okay, I want to be an artist, because I was making all these beats and doing all this stuff, but I didn't really like the way that people sounded on my beats.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this myself because I know exactly what I'm going for. And I always played around with freestyling and stuff, but I really started taking it serious all together when I got to college. Yeah, bro.
That's dope, man. That's dope. Yeah, I would say personally, like a lot of the best musicians that I've come across always start in the church. So like I always love to hear that. Like when somebody tells me, yeah, I grew up playing in the church, I'm like, oh, I already know you, whatever you do, I know you're good at it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Because in the church, they don't go for mediocre when it comes to
Yeah.
who's doing the music, you know what I'm saying? So how was that like playing in the church coming up?
It's exactly what you said. Like it was kind of nerve-wracking, which made me better faster, I think, because I would be on stage and I didn't really have the luxury of messing up, because if you mess up, it's like real embarrassing. And
Yeah.
and they don't really play that either. It's like if you're not good, they're gonna kick you off stage. So there was a couple times where they kicked me off the drum set, and I was like, I'm not really trying to experience.
Yeah.
So I just decided, all right, I'm gonna just practice and get better. So I would practice. I would go to the church when nobody was there. I would play drums. I would just kind of like use the older people as mentors and things like that. And then eventually I got the hang of it. I think it was always in my ear and always a part of me, but I just needed to practice to kind of build myself up. So it definitely made me a better player by ear and just like kind of spiritually, like just my soul. That's my origin. So I always knew how to put my soul in my music.
Yeah, man, for sure. And I definitely hear that in like everything you create, you know what I'm saying? I think one of the first pieces of just music content I came across from you was you were doing I believe it was like a submission for a Tiny Desk performance. And
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. And it was like I want to say it was like around
That
The
was like,
2019 or
yeah, that was
earlier
like
than that?
2019. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember that, and you were like rapping and singing on that. It was just so soulful, man. Like that's what caught my attention, and I was like, yeah, I gotta find a way to work with him because I'm a big fan of like soulful music. So,
Right.
you saying that you started in the church, it just makes complete sense now. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, how do you feel now that you're like teaching music? How do you feel like you've been able to transition from someone who was like a student, like you said, learning from the older musicians in the church and then doing your own music and then now teaching other people? Like how has that transition been over time for you?
Well, it's been crazy how much better it's been making me, bro. Like
Mm-hmm.
I always produced, but I didn't take it to the level I'm at now until really I started teaching, because I teach music production at a high school, and it's kind of like a special kind of arts situation of a high school where I got students from all these different parts of the area. So
Right.
they all come from different styles and different backgrounds. So they'll literally ask me questions and I have to figure out the answer. Like I can't just say, I'm not the type of person to just be like, I don't know. And if
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'll tell them I'm gonna figure it out. So if they ask me about, I don't know, like drill music or just anything in particular, I'm like, okay,
Right.
if even if I don't do this style, let me go figure it out and I bring it back to them. So I've kind of become more of a Renaissance man now because I can really touch pretty much every genre. Because my students, they touch every genre. So as their teacher, I got to be right there with them.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Now that's dope. That's dope. Yeah. Cause I figure like I've always heard people say like when you have to teach something that makes you become better at it. Cause now you got to know the ins and outs. People are gonna ask you all kinds of questions. So
yeah.
yeah, I definitely could see that, man. So let's kind of go back a little bit. So like I said, I remember coming across your Tiny Desk, performance, but when was the actual first time that you released music to the public under, I'm saying, like as yourself under your artist name?
I think it was actually like 2013 or 2014 when I started
Mm,
dropping music as Lou Alex. So I was still in high school at the time, but at that time period, I wasn't as confident in my mixes and in my production and stuff. So I would
right.
really show my closest friends and things like that. I wasn't out here like promoting it to everybody. So it was kind of low key for a little bit, but I dropped my first, I would say, single. I was in high school still, probably around 2014. So I was probably like 16 or 17 when I dropped my first thing as Lou Alex.
Hmm.
And when I got to college, that's when I dropped my first official project, which was called Purgatory. And that was 2016. And I produced that, I mixed and mastered that. I do that with all my projects, really, for the most part. But at that time period, I just remember I locked myself away in my dorm room and I legit like I just disappeared for a couple months, and all my homeboys
Yeah.
was like, "Yo, Lou, where you at?" Like, or Lou, that's what they called me. They was like, "Lou, where you at?" And I've always had this mindset of just I've always known what I want to do. Like I've always
Hmm.
known I'm meant to do music, and so I just had this mission on my mind where I couldn't really be distracted by anything or anybody, and I was just locked in. So I did my first project, Purgatory, which was like 10 songs, and from that point on, I just kept dropping music. I was dropping bodies of work. And I was doing like the Tiny Desk concert submissions, and you and me linked up and I did
Yeah.
Champagne and everything. So I just kept it going from there. But 2016 was definitely the first like full project that I dropped up.
Yeah, word. And what kind of like the transition from high school to college, because I kind of went through that same journey where like I was doing music in high school, but I was like only sharing it with my friends because like you
Yeah,
said, the confidence wasn't there yet, right? So
yeah,
then, for me, I remember getting to college, I took a break from music for a while, because I felt like I just had to like focus on college for a little bit. But
yeah.
then, I kind of started missing it. So I came back and, kind of developed that confidence. Like, how was that journey for you? Like, what about college do you think made you more confident or kind of like, brought out a different side of you that made you go full force with the music?
Where I mean, I was always, I would say, pretty confident in my musical ability. It was just the recording process. I felt like I didn't have the proper mix and everything to make me sound the way I sounded in my head. Um,
Mm,
and so I really started trying the hardest like my sophomore year. But at that point too, I really had a story to tell at that point. And I always had a story. I always had life stuff that I was going through, but The thing that really pushed me to the edge and was just like, yo, I'm going all in, was my freshman year in college. Pretty much, I think it was December of my freshman year. So it was shortly after I got to high school or got to college, I got sick. And I started having seizures. And the type of seizures that I have, they say they're caused by stress and exhaustion and all these different things, because I've always kind of overworked myself. So they say it's a result of that, and then like, you know, trauma and stuff that I had never dealt with at the time, and things like that. And so when I went to the hospital for it, they diagnosed me with the seizures, and I just really didn't know what to do, because the type of seizures I had, there was no medicine for. So they just kind of sent me back home or back to the dorm after that, after being hospitalized for like a week or whatever. So when I got back, since I didn't have no medicine or nothing, like I just kept having the seizures, and it was mad. Like it was real crazy at first. Like I was having probably, this is gonna sound like an exaggeration, but I legit was having close to like 100 seizures a day. And it was to the point I couldn't even walk, because mine, I was doing like backflips on the ground. Like it's not no regular, like just twitch or nothing. Like I was legit, like my body's flailing and everything. And it was aggressive like that every time. And so that's when I really wrote Purgatory, because it was about kind of being trapped. And purgatory is kind of like that in between heaven and hell. And I felt like Earth was that for me. And I felt like I was just stuck. And so the only thing I had to go to was music. And so I just poured my everything into my music, because I didn't have anybody that could really understand that particular struggle. So it was really like a lonely place of solitude where I just had to put it in my music. And from that point on, I was just completely honest in my music, almost even more honest than I was in person with people. Like I was just, I used music as like therapy, and like I would vent, and I would just put it all in my music. So that's what really pushed me to be like, okay, I'm going all in with this, because I already didn't want to do anything else. So when that happened, I was like, okay, but I'm gonna just tell my story and see where it goes.
Wow, yeah. And now that I think about it, I do remember. I forget what song it was I listened to from your catalog, but I do remember you talking about that. So, wow, that's like, yeah, that's crazy to even imagine. Because I mean, like there's, like you said, you know, I can't imagine that anybody else would have been able to relate to that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that probably opened up a whole new door of like vulnerability for you wanting to tell that story, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, and I'm sure like somebody out there is probably listening to it and you know, was able to relate to that. So that's, I mean, that's one of the things that I love about music. You know, it's like when you feel like your story can be very unique, but there might be like one other person out there that it might touch. You know what I mean? So, so
And
yeah,
when I
man,
started
I
putting
love that.
music, oh, my fault. I was gonna say,
No,
when
go
I started
ahead.
putting the music, that's when I noticed that other people were going through similar things or the same thing.
Mm,
But around me in my immediate circle and stuff, I didn't really have anybody to relate to. So that's why I was like, man, let me put this in the music. And when I did it, I was so thankful that I was vulnerable, because I was like, okay, now I'm getting something from it too. Because when people are hitting me up telling me that they have the same story, that's encouraging me that like I'm not alone. So it kind of
yeah.
went both ways. And it's like every time I drop music, I'm a little uncomfortable with being as real as I am in my music. But I just think back to the times I've been real in my music, and the way that it's touched people and the way that it's touched me at the same time. And I'm like, nah, I got to do it. So that's kind of like my number one rule with music, is like, just be 1,000% real. Like just tell your story, because everybody's story is unique, like you said, and everybody has
Right.
the things that they go through. So I was like, man, I got to just tell my side of things, for
Yeah, no
sure.
doubt, no doubt. Yeah. So was the music kind of like one of the things that help you relieve some of those stresses and you had things under control? Like how I guess like how did you kind of try to figure out how to deal with that, you know, since they didn't have like any treatments or medications for it?
I mean, that was 2016, and it's
Mm,
2023 now, and I still have them to this day. So it's something where I don't have them as much, but at the time it was like I didn't have any medicine or anything for it. So like the whole rest of my life after 18, I'm 25 now, but the whole rest of my life after 18, I've been trying to figure it out, type stuff. Like
right.
and you can hear me if you listen back to my music, you can hear each tape that I dropped, I was figuring it out, or like I
Mm,
discovered a new method, or something happened to me where I was forced to figure it out even more. So that's why I like being real in my music too, because when I look back, it's kind of like a scrapbook of where I was at the time. And at the time when I was making certain music, I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this. But now that I am where I am now, I'm like the healthiest I've ever been. And I never thought I would see life like this again. So I think it's just important to be authentic. And when I was being authentic, it was helping me to figure it out. Cause like I said, it was like, that was the only thing I could turn to was music. And music was really the thing that was helping me. It was really my medicine. So out of everything the doctors gave me, all the medicine they were giving me, music was the one thing where if I'm having a seizure and I play some music, or if I listen to some music, it could relieve the seizure. So I think music is it's a spiritual thing, it's a mental thing. And it's really like a universal type of language, because I've been able to get into situations and connect with people where I never would have had the ability to connect with them in the first place without the music. So yeah, man, it's everything really. It's like my life.
Nah, yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, like there's, like you said, like sometimes with music, it gives you the space to be more vulnerable within the music than you are with people in real life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I don't know if you've ever gotten this question, but like sometimes I'll get the question, like people will be like, man, like you do music, how come you not, you know, it's like, how you so shy in real life, or how, you know what I'm saying? So it's like
Yeah.
people assume because you do music, or, you know, you're so expressive in your art, that it translates to real life, but they don't understand like that's a safe space. That's where I can go and be that person. You know what I'm saying? Like how, like has that kind of been, you know, with you, your situation where people kind of look at you the same way, like, oh, how is it you're like this in music, and then in real life it's like, oh, you're like a whole different person.
Well, yeah, I feel you on that. Because I've experienced similar stuff to that. But for me, I'm pretty much the same person. Like I'm super, I would say I'm super outgoing. Even in person, especially now that I'm a teacher, I kind of have to be. And I've always been in zones where that's where I thrive, is just kind of being a light in the room wherever I go. But it was hard to be that light when I was in darkness. So I did realize that in those times of darkness, like music was really my safe space to talk about everything, because I was always the type of person to share the happy parts of my life with people, because I didn't feel like me sharing my struggles was gonna help them in any way. But now the music and like who I am as a person is finally kind of collided. So now everywhere I go, I think if people listen to my music first and then they talk to me, they can kind of get a sense of, okay, that's the same person. And the same way, vice versa. Like if people talk to me and hear my story, it gives them even more understanding of my music. So now I'm much more vulnerable. Music has actually pushed me to be more vulnerable in person and things like that, because I grew up in a situation or a family where we didn't necessarily discuss trauma or nothing like that. Like we dealt with it and we laughed about it and we got through it, but we didn't discuss, oh, this is how it made me feel. Because to us, that was weak in a way. And now I've grown past that. Now I see it's necessary to feel things and to talk about it and to get through it. But growing up, it was always, don't live life based on your feelings is the message I got kind of from my folks and stuff like that. So it made me strong to a certain extent, but that also did a lot of damage. And that's why I ended up having the problems I had in the first place, because it was like I put so much in to the point where my body literally couldn't take it and I had to let it out in some way, shape, or form. So now I realize how much I've grown with music, because music is really the thing that pushed me to be the person I am today.
Man, definitely, man. Definitely. Yeah. I totally relate to that. And I think most artists would also be able to relate to that as well, man. So, I know you're from the DMV. Is this where like did you move to the DMV area, or is this where like you're originally from, like born and raised?
Well, I'm born and raised in the 757, which is Southern Virginia, closer to like Norfolk, Virginia Beach, everything like that. But I moved to the DMV, which we call that Northern Virginia down there. Like we don't really ourselves in the DMV in the 7-5, but now that I'm up here, like I consider myself DMV too. But I moved up here just for college because I went to George Mason, and that's in Fairfax. So that's how I ended up here. And then I just kind of bounced around Northern Virginia and Maryland and just the DMV in general. I was close to DC at one point too. So now I've been all over Virginia and the DMV, but Virginia is definitely like my starting place. Like that's definitely my home, like the 757 for sure.
For sure. Yeah, that's dope. Because I remember, I want to say, I think it was last year or maybe the year before last, you had some of your music was featured on Airwave Music Radio or something like that. So yeah, so how was that? How did that come about, man? Because that was really dope to see. You know, you getting love, and I think that's established by Pusha T. That's kind of like his thing, you know, and him being from Virginia too. So like, how was that for you? How did that come about? And you know, just getting love from a Virginia legend as well.
Yeah. So I mean, Airwave, that's Pusha T's label, and his whole goal is to push Virginia artists and to show all the talent we have, specifically in the 757, but in Virginia in general. But honestly, bro, it was an honor, but it was also a surprise because I may have sent them my music before, but I really don't even remember sending them my stuff. I just remember the Instagram notification on Pusha T's page, and it was like you featured on Airwaves radio playlist. So it kind of caught me off guard too, to be honest with you. Like it wasn't something that I sought out and was like, yo, I'm about to get up here. I had already been sending them some music. I already had like kind of mutual friends and mutual people because we all from the same area, like, you know, Push from Norfolk and everything like that. And I'm from Chesapeake. That's 10, 15 minutes from each other. So we already kind of had a similar background. And I think they were already had their eyes out for me. And so they just decided to go ahead and post me. And I think that was the end of 2021, right before I started teaching and everything in 2022. So ever since then, I've kind of just been grinding and now that I know eyes are on me, like I just really been doing my own music and doing my thing, trying to push it out even further.
Yeah, that's dope. I've always said like Virginia is a really interesting place when it comes to like the sound of Virginia hip hop. You know, Virginia music in general, but Virginia hip hop specifically, because it's like depending on what the artist sounds like, most people would say Virginia is the South, right? Well, like depending on what the artist sounds like, you might associate them with like more East Coast. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what kind of influence has that had on you as far as like some of the artists that are from around this area, and just the whole sound of like, you know, the soundscape of the music here? Like, how has that played an influence in what you do as well?
Well, from the time I started producing, Virginia was like the hugest influence to kind of grow up around. I remember when I first started producing, I was in a group. It was me and my homeboy Cordell, and it was called Accented Sounds. And I was in like 7th grade or something. And we had just picked up FL Studio and we were figuring out how to use it and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a huge hip hop head until maybe like I got around middle school and things like that. Cause you know, I grew up in the church. So my parents tried to keep away from that type of music, even though my uncle and them was putting me onto it anyway. But when I started producing though, Cordell was super into Pharrell and the Neptunes and NERD and everything like that. And so just being around him, I naturally picked up that same kind of like obsession with the movement. And they had been around years before us, but we would do research and go back, and we loved Missy Elliott and we love, you know, Chris Brown. Like it's mad people from D'Angelo, like it's mad people from VA. So the sound was kind of influenced by all of these different artists and producers, but at the same time, VA never necessarily had like a specific sound. Everybody that I know came from VA, whether it was Timbaland or Nick Mira or whoever, they always had their own style. And I think that's the same thing with me. I was influenced by these people, but naturally I just kind of, it led to my own direction of discovering my own sound. And I think that's the beautiful thing about VA in general is I mean, that's no disrespect to any other cities or anybody else that's doing their thing. They have this hub of music, but I've noticed a lot of other cities that are popping. You can tell it's from that city. Like if somebody dropped, like, okay, this is from here or there. But VA, it was always this thing where it was like, you knew it was fire, but you couldn't pick out, okay, that's from VA. You could probably pick out, oh, that's Pharrell's production, or that's Neptunes, or that's Timbaland or whatever, but you couldn't necessarily say, okay, that's VA. So my whole goal is really just been to push VA artists since I was a kid. Like I've always wanted to push VA artists and producers and get our message out, because it's mad talent. Like it's so much talent that I grew up around, and everybody's so unique and different. And I think everybody that comes from VA will tell you that like that's what we preach, is just be yourself and be different. And by being yourself naturally, it's kind of like a unique thing to do, because everything nowadays can start to sound the same, even though there's so much good music out there. Things can start to sound the same. So I've always prided myself on just having my own sound, because that's what I was inspired by, was people that have their own sound.
Yeah, most definitely. So like outside of yourself, like as far as like artists that are out today, whether they're like mainstream or underground, are there any artists that come to mind that you feel like are still keeping that Virginia legacy alive? You know, you included, of course.
Well, I appreciate that, bro. But definitely the same people from when I was younger plus more, which is a beautiful thing too, to see the longevity and the timelessness of the records, is because like a lot of times you see people, they get hot and then they disappear, but everybody that I know from VA, they got on and they became timeless and they became legends. So the same people I look up to, like Pharrell Williams, Chad Hugo, Lex Luger, Timbaland, those are huge inspirations. And then even nowadays, Nick Mira, he's doing this thing. Callie Uchis, I don't know if I pronounce her name right. I always mess her name.
Me too, bro.
But you know, she from VA too. So it's just so many different styles and different artists. And then even the underground artists, I kind of pay attention to, because we all kind of came up together and grew up together. So like Stephen Logan from Laws, and then Breeze Park and Cameron Parker and all these different people, they from the 757, and we kind of grew up together. So it's just mad people that were local at the time when I was coming up and kind of on the same level as me, as well as like the people who have reached superstardom and like that are out of here type stuff. But they always come back to love with things like Something in the Water and everything like that. So it's a new generation of artists that's coming up, but most definitely like Pusha T and Clips and all these different people, they still got the name up, and they still nominated for Grammys and inspiring the people down there. So it's just a huge hub of inspiration, bro.
Yeah, for sure. So this past year, I want to say you've had a few different releases. I want to say 3, or was it more than 3?
I gotta think about this. It was
I know you had the single. Yeah, you had the Intermission.
Was the album that was February, and then I dropped Intermission in November of 2022, and then I just dropped a single in December, so like the very end of 2022. And right now I'm plotting on Agape Deluxe, which is coming soon.
Okay.
I haven't announced that date yet, but it's coming extremely soon. So that's gonna be like the refurbished Agape with a lot more songs on it. Yeah, bro. So
yeah. So my question coming out of that is, I know for me and for some other artists, like this kind of time period where we've kind of been in between like the pandemic and other things, it's kind of been weird, right? So like how has that been? Like how has that been for you? I mean, you've still been like consistent, super consistent, I'm saying, with your releases. But like how did that kind of affect your music and how you kind of doing things?
Yeah, the pandemic, it was a rough season, I think, for everybody, really. And even if it wasn't rough, it was a season of kind of discovering who we are, because you didn't have everybody else to rely on. You kind of had to go into solitude with your family or with your immediate people or with yourself. And that's exactly what I had to do. And it was rough for me at the beginning, because 2019, I think that was around the beginning of the pandemic. In 2020, like the beginning of 2020, I had gotten fired from my job at the time. And so I really had to go straight in producing, and like that was my main way of making money. And I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. Like I had gone broke, which was wild, because at the same time I was being consistent with like posting music and Instagram videos and things like that. So it was like I was gaining all these followers and notoriety and stuff, and I was getting reposted by Dirk and Masego and all these different people, which was a blessing. but at the same time, I don't think anybody realized how much I was struggling. And I was really living check to check, or living music check to music check. And I was just making it work. I was door dashing, like I was doing everything I had to do to make it work. So my days was like, it could have been 16-hour days of just working and making as much money as I can by doing music for other people. And then coming back and like, you know, posting, I was doing a lot of saxophone covers and stuff at that time.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So I was really heavy into that at that time. So it looked like, if you just looking at social media, it looked like that was like the greatest time for me. But but in reality, it was like I wasn't really getting no money from doing these videos and stuff. I was just getting the notoriety, and I was pushing that towards my music. So my whole goal coming out of the saxophone video covers and things like that was to push my original music, because another thing was I didn't want to become noticed as just a saxophone player or just somebody that does one thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, I just knew I had all these other things that I did. So I spent 2022 and the kind of coming out of the pandemic, I spent those times just kind of working and grinding, but also pushing myself as an original artist and pushing my original music and things like that. But yeah, to be completely honest, bro, I was down bad for a little bit. Like I was struggling, but I just stayed consistent even through the struggle, and I made it work and I made it out. So things got a lot better after the pandemic for sure.
Yeah, that brings up so many interesting questions, bro. Because as an artist, like it's so let's start with the saxophone covers, because I remember that was like I was like, yo, he about to take off. Like I remember that. But it's like a lot of times people see that, or like just even like let's even just say like pre-social media, right? Like we've heard a lot of stories of artists where there might have been a time where everybody thought, man, this person, they must be living like, you know, they just getting all this attention. But like people really don't realize, like, until you reach a certain point, music really don't pay that much, regardless of how much attention you get, right? So it's like kind of give us some insight to that, because like you said, like your followers was growing real fast, you was getting shared by everybody. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure like people looking from the outside in, they thinking like, oh, you making it, you good. Like
don't forget about me and stuff. And I'm over here like who's trying to make it to the next day. Like
break that down for us, man, so people can understand like what that's like.
I would definitely say followers don't equate to money. And I think a lot of people think that, like they think, oh, this person got 25,000 followers, so they got $25,000. And it's not that, because in the industry, first of all, it takes a lot just to get in. Like it takes a lot to even rub shoulders with these people and whatnot, let alone to get these people to start paying you or to collabing with you and things like that, and getting paid for your work. And even if you do get paid for your work and it's one good situation, there's no telling when the next situation is going to happen. So it's really just being a full-on entrepreneur is difficult, and being a musician is difficult. And every musician that I know went through some type of struggle period before they made it to where they wanted to be. And growing up, I didn't have necessarily financial problems or anything like that. Like growing up, my family had gotten sick and stuff. So there was some time periods where we were struggling a little bit more. But when I got out on my own and I was really trying to make music work, that's when I really had to learn, okay, like there's not as much money in this as I always thought there were, or thought there was. So it was a hard lesson to learn, because I always wanted to do music, and my girl, like my family, everybody knows that's always been Luke's thing, like was music. And I've never even really shown interest in doing anything else. So I was determined going into it, or just going into music in general from a young age. I was like, no matter what I have to go through, I'm gonna get there. And I had to go through kind of some trials and tribulations financially, with my health, like all of these different things. But at the end of the day, everything I went through taught me how to manage money, how to manage my health, how to take care of myself. And if I learned anything, it was to put yourself first, like to take care of you first. Because if you're not taking care of you, you're not gonna have no music to write about. Like you're not alive to tell your story. So I was doing my best to try to turn that notoriety into money and everything like that. And I was getting some people that was hitting me up, asking me to play at certain events and stuff like that. And sometimes it would work out and then sometimes it wouldn't. And it's crazy because I could be posted by the biggest artist in the world one day, and then the next day I'm driving DoorDash for 13 hours. And it's like, people don't even think that, like they would never think. So yeah, bro, it's crazy. Like I would definitely say social media is not always what it looks like. Like, not that people are promoting fake stuff or anything, but that people definitely promote their good before they promote any struggle that they're going through. So I think people should keep that in mind when they trying to flex for people and whatnot. Like, definitely get yourself right in real life before you start trying to flex on the gram.
Yeah, nah, for sure. Because man, trust me, I understand that. I every time something like slightly big even happens for me, people that hit me up, man, like they want you to be excited, and it's like I want to be excited, but I understand the reality of it. And so sometimes people might think like you're being like pessimistic or whatever, but it's like nah, it's like the reality of it is this. Like, you know, y'all might be thinking this is the big break, but it's like, nah, it's not. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that's definitely something that I think like people need to understand a little more. Another interesting point you brought up was kind of like having be intentional about pushing your own original music. And that's another thing that I see a lot of people going through that I went through as well. And especially now with like TikTok, Reels, like kind of like where more short content is being prioritized. And I saw a post the other day. Somebody was like, every time I post like something funny or I make like a funny video that goes viral, but my music never goes viral. And I remember for me, like back in 2019, I used to do a lot of freestyle. And I would notice like those would get a lot of attention. But my original music, when I'm like, I got something out, go stream it, they don't get no attention. So I stopped doing freestyles, and people still hit me up to this day, man, you should try to do more freestyles. I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that.
Too. I'd be like, nah, bro.
Exactly. Like, nah, go listen to my music. I'm not doing no more freestyle. So like kind of break that down as well, like having to be intentional, because like people, once you kind of start going viral again, attention for one thing, it seems like that's all people lock in on. And they don't, you know what I'm saying? They don't want to lock in on anything else. So like kind of break that down for people, like having to be more intentional about pushing the things that you want people to pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, that's the main reason I stopped doing the sax videos as frequently and everything, was because I noticed that it was getting bigger than I was. Like, it was getting bigger than my original music. And I was like, I see how this could be a way in, but I don't want this to be what I'm known for. Like, I'd rather take steps and build up slowly and get my original music pushed and get myself known as a producer and all these different things, so that when I'm up there, like I can actually do the work that I want to do. And I'm not just playing sax background for people all the time and stuff like that. So I had to learn to be intentional and just promoting the things that I want people to kind of see and know about me. Because every video I was doing was going viral. It was like, it didn't even feel like my page was my own. Like, I felt like anything I posted, it was above me. And so that would have been great if it was my original music, because that's what I've always strived for. But I noticed, I was like, okay, let me just take a step back and kind of start rebuilding from the ground up again. And I also learned throughout the process that I used to have a savior complex, where I thought somebody was just going to reach down and just lift me up, especially when I was doing the videos and things. I thought it was like, okay, one day this person going to see my video and they're going to reach out and be like, all right, bro, you on now, I'm paying you. I'm about to fly you out. We doing this and that. And I had to realize, like, nobody's going to save you but you. Like, nobody's going to make it but you. And even the people that do make it real quick overnight, it's like it fades just as quickly. So I'd rather build something with the foundation that I can stand on for the rest of my life than get some type of overnight success. And so I let go of anybody trying to save me. And I just kind of started building for myself and being intentional and saying, okay, the fans that I do gain and the music that I do make is going to be for me and about me. Like, it's not going to be because I'm doing covers of other people's music or anything like that. It's like, I'm gonna just build this from the ground up and put the work in, because it's definitely work. It's
Yeah.
definitely work.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
like how has the shift been now that you've been more intentional about that? Because I'll say like I've seen a big difference now that like I only push what I want people to hear.
yeah,
And when I do that, like it gets the attention, it does what I want it to do. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like a relief for me knowing that like, okay, I can do that and I don't have to kind of conform to having to do other things that is like that's not really what I want to do, but
yeah.
people do it to, get attention and it kind of doesn't translate over. So like how has that shift been? Do you feel like it's been a big positive change once you became more intentional about that?
Yeah, it's definitely been a huge positive change. And I've noticed the change even more so in real life, like outside
Mm,
of social media, because I really took a break from social media for a while just to
yeah.
live and then with quarantine and everything, I was like, let me discover who I am outside of all of this stuff. Cause it was so much attention and so much of me looking at my phone all day and figuring out what's the next thing I can do to get
Mm,
the next viral video. And I learned I felt like I was falling away from the reason that I even wanted to do this in the first place. And it
right.
didn't feel like I was really just making music for me anymore. So the main thing that changed was I got that kind of youthful desire to make music again that I used to have when I was a kid. And I got back to myself. And so even now, like with my students and everything, I feel like how I felt it at their age, like where
Yeah.
I didn't know the struggles that would come with the industry. I didn't know any of this type of stuff. I literally was just inspired and I just wanted to make music. And that's what I did. And I feel like I'm in that zone again. And that's pushed me to be even better as a musician and as a producer and as an engineer and everything like that, because I'm not focused on attention or likes or followers or anything like that. Like I'm literally just focused on doing me, pushing me out to the world. And if people
Mm,
like it, then they come, they support me. If they don't like it, it is what it is. But I'm gonna just keep doing me. And that's been the biggest change is I don't have to do anything for anybody really. Like everything I do musically is for me and for myself benefit. And then of course to help others, but it all derives from a real authentic place.
for sure. Yeah, man. I mean, you speaking to my soul right there, bro.
Yeah,
Because I
bro.
went I went through a similar situation, and as I wish I would have came to that realization a lot earlier,
Yeah,
because for me it was like going through the pandemic that kind of put me in a more vulnerable place just mentally. And I
yeah,
just like you said, like that complex where you feel like somebody's gonna reach down and pull you up and but once I kind of snapped out of it and realized like, nah, like I have everything I need to bring myself up. I don't gotta wait for somebody to pull me up.
yeah,
Then that's kind of when my mindset changed and all these different things that I'm doing now start to come about. And, just trying to pass that mindset on to other artists as well. Cause I mean, I see it all the time where other
yeah,
artists feel that way too. So I'm hopefully, man, somebody would listen to this interview and it'll kind of, the light bulb is gonna come on for them because
yeah,
I think a lot more artists need to realize that, man. So
yeah,
that's definitely very, very important.
yeah.
Um, so for you, man, like we said, you do everything, rap, sing, play instruments. What for you do you feel like when you're, as far as like the music that you create, do you consider yourself more of a rapper or a singer, a little bit of both? Like how will you kind of, if you had to categorize yourself, like how
Yeah.
would you kind of, I'm saying, describe yourself as an artist?
I would kind of describe myself the same way I would describe the people that I looked up to growing up. When it came to Pharrell and Kanye and these
Mm,
different people, they were always producers first, and then they were artists on top of that. So when I envision myself, even in the industry and the way I want to work, is like I'll always love music and being a musician and a producer probably
mm,
first, but I also put just as much enjoyment in being an artist. And so I've labeled it less as I've gotten older because the lines have kind of started to blur. And now when
mm.
I go to the studio, I just create what feels right. And if it turns into me being an artist over the production, then I do that. If it turns into this being a song that would be good for somebody else, then I just consider myself the producer in that moment. if somebody brings me some vocals and I feel like, okay, I could add something to this, I'll be an engineer in that moment. So I'm just a musician that is versatile.
Yeah.
I don't put any limits on it. I just say like I love music, and anything musical is something that I want to be involved in.
Yeah. That's a very Virginia answer for sure.
Yeah.
y'all do everything, bro. Like,
Yeah,
cause
bro.
like I just moved to Virginia like a year and a half ago, so I live in Richmond now, and
Right. Yeah.
just kind of like learning about everybody that is from Virginia for real. It's like yeah, like they do a little bit of everything. I mean, for
Yeah.
real, he produced, he rap, he sing, I remember watching an interview. He was talking about, the songs that he's written for people and a song he wrote for, that he wanted Prince to do. And I think he ended up making it his own song. So yeah, y'all are crazy talented for sure.
Appreciate you,
That's
bro.
so that's, I'm very, very, very honored to be able to interview you and kind of get that perspective as well. So what do you feel like, you've kind of talked about the deluxe coming this year.
Yeah.
What else do you feel like, do you have in the plans, for people, for your fans, your listeners, your supporters, in 2023? What should they be looking forward to?
Definitely more music. But that's always like I'm gonna always be pushing music out.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm looking forward to the most this year, even outside of myself, is my students. Because when I started teaching, which was like last year, it's a high school music production program, and they started a
Mhm.
group, or we started a group called 525.
Yeah, I
And
saw that.
yeah. And so I'm kind of interested mostly right now in building that foundation for them, because I look at
Mhm.
this as being a hub for artists and musicians and engineers and producers for the next generations to come. So I think my answer back in the day probably would have been something about pushing my own music, which is always going to be a thing. But
Yeah.
now I'm more so interested in pushing the next generation and setting a foundation for, even when I'm not here, the people that looked up to me and that learned from me, like they can go thrive on their own and do music. So I would say definitely look for more Lou Alex music, production, features, drops in general, but also be on the lookout for 525, because 525, they're an amazing group of just human beings in general, and their talent is out of this world. Like I never thought that people of that age,
Mhm.
whether they're from Virginia or from wherever, like I never thought I'd see that level of talent from people that age, and it's pushed me to be an even better musician. So we got some things in the works. We do a listening party and an album every single year.
Okay,
So
that's dope.
this year, yeah, so this year in May, they'll be dropping an album. They don't have a title for it yet, but 525 will definitely be dropping an album. I'll be dropping my deluxe, which is basically like just me dropping Agape, kind of like a refurbished Agape. And
Mhm.
then I also have a project that I'm working on with my homeboy CJ Saylor. Me and him came up together in VA, and that's really my best friend. And we got a project that we're working on together too, that's on some R&B, neo soul kind of rap stuff. So
Yeah.
all of that is in the works, and all of that should be out before the summer. And then after that is just, we're gonna see what else we want to do after that.
That's dope. That's dope. Yeah, man. I mean, as far as, with 525 and everything, man, with the listening party, the album, definitely let us know if there's any way we can
Sure.
help promote and push them. If the listening party is not too far from where I'm at, I would definitely love to come through and support. So definitely keep us in the loop on that. Yeah, just kind of give us a little bit of background on them. Like I said, I've seen, you post about them, and I've heard I think 2 releases from them
Yeah.
so far. So kind of give us like a little bit of a background on the group and how you got started with them.
Yeah, so basically, a music computer technology teaching position opened up around a year or two ago, and it was like the perfect fit for me. And I already had known some people inside the county of
Hmm.
Fairfax and things like that. And so they called me up and were like, "Do you want to teach this music tech teaching position?" And so I applied for it and everything like that. and I got the job. And when I got there, I was thinking at first, okay, this is just going to be a class. Like, it's just going to be something where they come and learn about music production and engineering. And it turned into being just something that I envisioned being here for generations. And the talent level and everything that they had, I was like, okay, we have to do something with this. So the students and I decided we're going to start dropping an album every year. And so our first album came out last year, and it was entitled Eden. That's EDEN if anybody wants to look that up. But we dropped that. It was 14 songs. And basically the way it works is I've got 3 classes that I teach. It's the same class pretty much, with the exception of one being the advanced and one being kind of the beginner. And they all get together for the album, and we make music all year, and we pick which songs we want to be on the album. And so it's like, it's got students producing it, it's got students engineering it, it's got students rapping on it, students singing on it, playing instruments, doing all these different things, but it's completely them. So we basically, our goal is just to put out an album every year and show people what's possible for the next generation. Because I really believe, especially now, that music, especially hip hop and kind of the genres that I grew up on, those musics only thrive if the younger generation is pushing it. Like the young generation, hip hop started. And so I think it's cool when people my age or older do it. But when I look at the young people, that's when I'm like, okay, this is what hip hop is about. Like, it's about being young and free and just speaking what's on your mind and what inspires you. So they all get together and they make incredible music. And the next album is going to come out around May 6th. We don't know the exact date yet, but that's what it's looking like right now. So I'll definitely get y'all the info for that and for the listening party and everything.
Yeah, please do. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing that you're doing, because I think that a lot of people, especially older, kind of dismiss the younger generation when it comes to hip hop or music in general. You know, just kind of like, you know, they feel like, oh, it ain't real music no more. They're not doing it the way we did it. But at the end of the day, man, you got to pour into them, you know. So I think that, you know, whatever they do, you know, as long as they have, you know, your support and support of other people in their community, you know, we already know it's going to be amazing. So, you know, just from what we've seen and heard already, we know it's headed in a good direction for sure. So, yeah, hip hop is going to be very grateful for that, and for you as well.
Thank you,
as
bro.
well. Yeah, no problem, man. No problem. So one of the questions couple of questions I'd like to ask towards the end, and this is something that I've kind of discussed a lot with artists. So the first question is kind of, you know, for a lot of people within our age group, right? I feel like we went through what I call like the second golden era of hip hop, which was kind of like the blog era.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's when like the Big Sean's, the Mac Millers, Kendrick, ASAP, you know, all those people were coming up, you know. So like, what influence did that have on you, you know, that era of music that, you know, I kind of like, I like to refer to it as the second golden era, because that's what I feel like it was. And, you know, so how did that kind of have an influence on you during that time? You know, you were probably like in middle school, high school as well.
Yeah. I would say that was really everything to me, because that was the only hip hop I was listening to for a while. Like, I wasn't into like the old school hip hop and stuff like that until a little later on, like probably later in high school. That's when I got into like Tribe Called Quest and people like that. But during that golden era though, I got to credit my uncle with putting me on to most of these artists, because my uncle's, he's not much older than me. Like, he's only like 6 years older than me or something like that. And so he put me on to all of the artists when I was coming up. Him and my older brother, they used to put me on to like Wayne, especially. Like, Wayne was my uncle's favorite rapper, especially when he was dropping Carter 2 and Fireman and all that stuff. So I grew up listening to really heavy rap. Like, and at the time it was Wayne, it was like Drake was coming out, and he had like the beginnings of what he is now. Just the whole Young Money in general was pushed kind of heavy. And then Big Sean, I loved listening to Big Sean. I loved listening to Kendrick was huge for me. So, and then of course I always kept it pretty VA. So I always listened to Pusha T and Clips and all these different people and Family and everybody like that. That's really outside of like the really famous people outside of VA. I was really on like Pharrell and them and Lex Luger and them heavy. So working with Waka and them, like I was in Gucci Mane, like I was on to everything. Because I listened to music for the rap, but I also listened for the production. So Kanye was a huge influence too. Like I remember when he dropped My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, that was like my favorite album ever, just because the production and the raps and the lyrics and
it was all
he used choirs and orchestras and stuff. That's what I want to do. Like, and that's I really reached my peak. That's the type of access I want to have, is like access to orchestras and choirs and doing those types of collaborations. So that's the type of stuff that really inspires me, is when the production is crazy and also like the lyrical content and the rap and the flow is crazy. Like that's, if we can mesh that together, that's like my favorite artist.
No doubt. Yeah, around that time, that's when, because I remember seeing a Pusha T music video on MTV, and at the time I knew nothing about Clips, so I thought he was a new artist.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, yo, this dude is crazy. Like,
yeah.
And then people were like, oh man, he been out. Like they started putting me on Clips and everything. So so like that's why I kind of like refer to that as like a second golden era, because one, you had so many dope new artists coming out, but also like there were other artists that were making a resurgence, like Pusha T. Like I think that was kind of like the beginning of his solo career for real. So you know what I'm saying? So that's super, super dope. And then the last question I like to ask is, what are three things, whether 3 words or just 3 things you can think of that kind of summarize you as a person, as a creative, you know, and just kind of overall what you do?
Peace, love, and light, for sure, bro. My name, Luke, is my actual name outside of Lou Alex. That's my real name that my mom gave me. And that means light giver. And I've always seen myself as somebody who gives light, but the past few years especially, it's been becoming very clear that that's my purpose, is to give light. And at all my shows, I always yell out peace, and I get them to yell love back to me. That's been something I've been doing since college. So everywhere I go, that's what I really want to promote, is peace, love, and just that light, and just shining that, because it's really it's a dark world that we living in nowadays, and we see all the shootings all the time. It's racism and everything is real heavy nowadays. So if I can just walk into a room or spread some type of peace or relaxation, or just being calm in the eye of the storm, that's my goal, is to just spread that peace and that purpose, because I feel like everybody has a purpose. And I really believe that my purpose is helping other people to find their purpose. So those are the 3 things I definitely would say. If I had to die today, like I want to leave the world with peace, love, and light.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. And I from, you know, just from what I know about you and, you know, having worked with you, I definitely think that those are, you know, a perfect way to describe your personality and, you know, what you do. So, and last thing, man, just let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your music, where they can go to support, you know, whether that's you or, you know, 525. You know, just let them know where they can go to do all that.
Well, for me, you can find me on Instagram at Lou Alexander. You can find me on Twitter at Lou Alex Music. If you search up Lou Alex Official, that's my old page. It got suspended because of the covers, the record label, stuff like that. So I'm rebuilding the Twitter, but that's Lou Alex Music. And then when it comes to the 525 pages, you can find them at Official 525, and that's everywhere. So definitely check them out. And there's also a couple other artists I want to shout out, because you were asking about artists, and they kind of popped up in my head like as you were talking, but it's so many. But definitely Maya Travis, he's doing his thing, and me and him we got to get another collab in. We worked together a little bit when I was in my high school days. And then also, of course, CJ Saylor, that's the one I'm doing the tape with that I was telling you about, and Eddie Lee. Those are huge. And then Alexander Nate as well. Alexander Nate, he's I would consider him more of a singer-songwriter, but he dabbles in a lot of different genres and things like that. So I'll definitely be on the lookout for them as well. Because everything I do is really to promote myself, but it's also to promote VA and promote the people that I came here with and want to leave here with. So I definitely want to shout.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, this has been a dope interview. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sitting here with us at Audio Freebase Radio. And you always got our support, supporting your music, supporting 525. Like we said, just keep us in the loop, and we'll do what we can to keep promoting, what you're putting out.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank y'all for
no problem. Yes, sir. And like that, man, that is it. This was Lou Alex with Audio Freebase Radio. Y'all stay tuned for more.